Hey y'all, it's Andrea with Sucs For You in Houston, Texas, and this video is going to be all about aloes. And I posted in the community page for you guys to leave any questions that you had about aloes, and you guys asked a lot of really good stuff. I'm going to do my best to answer everything. This is an aloe maculata from my grandma. I made a video on this a while back before we moved, and then I made another video of me having to dig it up and I put it back in the ground at our new house. And got a big flower stalk coming in. This is probably, I don't know, the 6th one this year. This guy is an Aloe barbadensis Miller. This is the one that is most commonly used and sold for food and medicinal purposes. It's got huge leaves. And this one has only flowered for me twice, I believe. My first succulent was an aloe vera from my mom, and I've had this for I guess about 22 years now. Of course, it's just continued to multiply, and it's pretty cool because she passed away in 2003, and to still have something alive of hers is very special to me. And I have another big pot out front, and I'm constantly giving it away and splitting it up, so it just keeps going. One thing I learned about aloe vera really quickly, or they taught me, is they like to be potted up tight together. They like to be like potted snugly. I had separated a bunch from a pot at our first house, and decided to try and put it along the driveway, you know, one every foot or so, thinking they'd fill out and, you know, look cute. And I was very wrong about that. They rebelled and began, you know, turning brown, pale, and I was, you know, freaking out. Was worried about them, so I pulled them all back up, stuck them back in a pot together, and they bounced back like within a week. They were very clear and adamant that they did not like to be separated and put in the ground. So keep that in mind. If you have a big pot of aloe vera, do your best to, when you separate them, to repot them. You still want to like keep a big clump of them together. So this bad boy right here is going to keep us company while we answer some questions. And this is an aloe aculeata from my husband, and spiky and awesome, and it is a pain to repot, so he's going to be in here for a while. I took your questions and I just broke them down into different topics like identification, light, soil, water, that kind of fun stuff. And I'm just going to go through and do my best to answer everything. We have on identification, Alan Randall asked, how can you tell the difference between an aloe and other, you know, maybe hybrids or haworthias or something like that? Their flowers are going to be the main way that you're going to be able to tell the difference. Like in haworthia, they're very long, skinny stems, very long in some cases, and with little tiny flowers that grow along the stem, like kind of like an orchid. With like my maculata and other aloes, you're going to see a really, you know, depending on the size of the plant, you're going to see a big stalk, you know, shoot pretty much straight up, and then it'll start branching out. And then different flowers will grow from the different sections of the branches on the flower stalk. And a lot of times they hang down like little bells. Sometimes they have, they grow in like clusters together. So that's the best way to tell, you know, if your plant is a true aloe. Moving on to light, Ricky Ryder asked a great question. Can all aloes handle full sun? And again, it just depends. When we're talking about light and full sun, it depends on the temperature, you know, your climate. Full afternoon sun in Houston is intense, and even the plant is just, you can touch it sometimes and they'll just be hot to the touch if they're like, you know, in a west facing garden, something like that. So morning, afternoon sun tends to be a bit more gentle, bright, filtered light, indirect light. I go over all of those terms in my video, The Right Light for Succulents. It's very important that you understand, you know, what kind of light you're working with, and how to, you know, protect your plants if they're getting too much full sun or if they're not getting enough. So long story short, if it's really hot where you are, aloes are not going to like full sun. Okay, soil. I always use a fast draining soil. I always use pots with drainage holes, of course. And aloes do like, you know, they like the same stuff that a cactus or any other succulents like. They can tolerate, some of them can tolerate, you know, even a little bit more organic material. But if it, you know, rains a lot or your pots dry out kind of slowly where you're located, like if it's really humid, then definitely, you know, opt for the less organic type of potting mix. Speaking of organic dirt, the reason we want to limit the amount that we have in our pots is because it doesn't dry out as quickly as the non-organic materials. And so we're talking about water now. Austin Peterson asked, because the leaves are so big and juicy, how do you tell when it's time to water? Especially if there's a top dressing on there, and I guess they're saying like they can't stick their finger down in and feel. You can use a moisture meter, and you want to be letting the soil dry out. I always recommend let it dry out for a couple days between watering. So that means if it feels dry on day 5, wait until day 7 or 8, and that just kind of gives the plant time to, you know, breathe and maybe put out some more roots, and definitely helps prevent the chance of overwatering. Root rot is like a big problem with aloes, especially when it's cold out, and we'll talk about, you know, different seasons in a minute. And Connie Orlando on Instagram asked, you know, do aloes like to be watered more often than other succulents? I would say no. I would say they seem to want more water just because of the type of the plant they are and how thick their leaves are. You think, oh, they're thirsty. Look how big these leaves are. It needs a big old drink. I don't think that's the case. It just depends on the plant, really, and again, it depends on the soil mix that you're using. If it has a lot of drainage materials in it, then it will, like, you know, tolerate more frequent watering. Otherwise, just, you know, again, wait till it dries out between waterings just to be safe. Next, let's talk about containers really quick. There's a good question by Dayton Cardone that asked, since aloes have shallower roots, should I use a shallower pot? And yes, most root systems in aloes tend to grow more vertically rather than deep. And in that situation, you do want to make sure the pot isn't super deep. This looks like a deep pot, but look at the size of that plant. And it had, when I repotted it, it had like a good root system, maybe about not quite as long as the plant itself. And but you know, I needed some more space down in there for those long roots. In aloe vera, like the Aloe Vera chinensis, which is the common kind of white spotted aloe vera, they do tend to have shallower roots, and the way they grow is they grow out, and then the pups form along the roots and then pop up from underneath the dirt around them. Those are called suckers. And so, yes, shallow pots, fast draining, porous materials in the pot, and preferably what the pot is made of, like, you know, unglazed clay, unglazed terracotta. You can get away with, you know, the glazed pots and other materials, but be sure you're using extra drainage materials. Maybe add some extra drainage holes too. Marissa K8 asked what aloes can be potted with other plants and vice versa, and pretty much, you know, everyone's going to get along pretty well with an aloe, except for maybe a cactus, because, you know, they tend to like less watering than anybody else. And of course, no light bulbs or other messems, because they're just, you know, they're so sensitive to when they're being watered. But you know, have fun potting them up with your euphorbia and other, you know, echeveria, and just, you know, keep an eye on them. Sometimes someone's not going to get along with another. They're just going to have different needs at different times, and that's really what you need to watch out for there. So depending on where you're growing aloes, indoors, outdoors, you know, indoors you might have trouble getting them enough light, but when you're growing outdoors, but you live somewhere that sees frosts, freezes, snow, you know, hard freezes, you're going to have to protect your aloes, and there's a couple of ways you can do that. Of course, just bringing it inside. You can do your best to keep the soil dry. If it's only going to, you know, be cold maybe for a couple days, if they're in dry soil and you cover them, like a frost cloth or something like that, it should be okay to leave them outside. especially if it's up against your house where it's going to be radiating some warmth. But that's, I guess, their dormancy period it tends to be in summer, but most of them also tend to be opportunistic growers. They'll just grow whenever the weather's nice and the heat's not stressing them out too much, basically. As far as winter, aloes are known to be winter growers, but that's going to be, that doesn't count really when it's like really cold out, like below 60, probably even below 65. So just because of where they're from, their winters are warmer, and that's when their growing season is. But if you have it somewhere where the temperature is still right, even at that time of year, you still want to be careful about watering them. And if it's going to get cold, wet, cold aloes are just asking for trouble. So cut back on watering in the winter if it gets cold where you are, and be prepared to protect them from frost, freeze, snow, and especially if their soil is damp. To be on the safe side, you might just want to start cutting back on watering like around fall, so they start getting used to it and kind of put them to sleep a little bit. Watering encourages growth. Fertilizing does too. So if it does get really cold where you are and you have to bring them inside, you want to start caring for them as a winter dormant plant. So I'm going to demonstrate how to remove the pups, one of them from this the Alworthia Black Gem. And you'll be able to see, well, let me get this worked up a little bit more. So let me loosen the dirt, just loosen it with my fingers while I'm feeling for roots. And I don't know if these have their own roots yet, so I'm just going to try and be careful just to check one. Because it is still hot out. Now when you're propagating anything and it's hot outside, it's going to take a lot longer for it to put out roots and put out new growth. So as you can see, these just pretty much jumped right out, and luckily they do have some of their own roots. But what I wanted to show you, wasn't expecting it to come out that easily. So these are all forming along the main root system of the mama plant, and I'll leave those in there. But with the ones that you propagate, if you're lucky, you'll get some roots like I did. And if the soil's dry, just go ahead and place them around mama. Remember, they were probably getting some protection from the sun by her at certain times of the day, so they might be a little more sensitive to light. So now that we have a baby, you can see the main root right here that was attached to the main root system. That is broken, so this does need a couple of days to heal because we don't want water to get inside of there. There's probably some damage on these other little roots too. So just, like I said, leave them on dry dirt, leave them somewhere protected from full sun. And if your soil is still pretty damp when you propagate and you're worried that you have damaged the roots from the main plant, or if you're worried that that's a possibility, unpot it. Just unpot the whole thing, do what you got to do, and let it sit out for a couple days before potting it back up. This soil is really dry, and that really wasn't anywhere near the main root system. I could tell because of all these other babies behind it. So I think they're going to be fine as they are. Let them dry. If you want to be safe, put them in dry dirt. Wait a few more days before drying them, or before watering, and then treat them like a normal plant with a baby. Now I want to go over some of the most common problems and solutions. Give you guys some troubleshooting tips. Aditi Nombar on Instagram asked a great question. What are some signs of thirst, and what does it mean if the leaf tips start browning? And signs of thirst are going to be, thinning of the leaves. They might actually, feel softer to the touch. And the tips browning can be a number of things, including needing more water. It could be getting too much sun. Arthur Vardanyan asked, I got an aloe vera chinensis, and it looks so dry and unhappy, but it's growing so many roots, meaning it's alive. In that instance, if it's not looking happy, but it has a lot of roots, I'm going to say maybe it's getting too much sun, maybe it's too hot. There's some reason it's stressed. So try to put it in, if you do have it in full sun, definitely move it to like bright indirect light, and it should perk up for you. And other causes for the leaf tip sprouting, that can come down to the roots, the soil it's in. The root system needs to be, strong enough and large enough to support the plant. And if you're having issues with roots, and they're too weak, or they're falling off, or they're drying up, and they're not able to uptake the water and nutrients to distribute it throughout the leaves, all the way to the tip, that could be something that you need to focus on. And you can stimulate new root growth by trimming it off, trimming all the dead stuff away. And when you do that, again, be careful about when you do it, because you don't want to be doing it when it's really hot out. You definitely don't want to do it in the wintertime, because you want those roots to come back as quickly as possible. So let's see. A good way to be able to tell if especially with aloe vera, is, like I said, they're very expressive. If they start to spread, if their leaves start to spread open more like this, and you get some lighter growth inside. This is the aloe blizzard, and these I did have in probably too much shade, but I had to protect them. We were just getting tons of rain, and I ran out of space. I just kind of tucked it away because I know it's a robust plant, but I can see, I'm not sure if you can really tell, but that the center growth is lighter. And look at it this way. That's really obvious. It's spreading its leaves wide open to try and capture as much light. It's trying to expose, as much of that surface to the visible light so it can capture more. And let's see. This is a good example, a good pot. I had a problem with this. This is the golden tooth aloe. Sorry. It started to rot in the center, but it has all these babies coming off of it. So what I did was I took my power drill and I took a drill bit, just like a normal driving drill bit, and I hollowed it out, and then I put some sulfur powder down in there to help prevent it from rotting. And I did have some issue with water getting in it, but putting that in there and keeping it dry long enough to heal has kept this main plant alive. And I've seen before where in a cactus where they core it, and then it starts to produce more pups. But you have to, long story short, you have to kill the whole center of the plant basically, so it doesn't heal. It doesn't try to repair itself. I don't know if I did that properly with this. I did this maybe 6 months ago, and there's no sign of new growth in there, but it definitely, it's still alive. Now, one thing I wanted to do while we were in this plant's business, the soil is wet. Like I said, it got rained on, but it is fast draining. I just want to pull this guy out and have a look at the pups. So these do not have their own roots yet. I mean, they maybe have some tiny ones like right here, but they're still really solidly attached to the mama. And they have like thick, the stalks or the stems, even though aloes are considered, most of them are considered stemless. These lower leaves down here, they just, they're old and wet, and that's normal in aloes, especially ones that have been tortured with a power drill. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull those off while we have them out. And you can see the roots are not that great. In fact, yeah, there's like only a couple of good roots on there. So we'll just go ahead and pull those off. This is a troublemaking plant. And at this point, it still feels firm and healthy, even though these roots are just like basically useless. What that means, that I need to do, is to keep it somewhere, bright indirect light, put it in dry dirt, and give it a chance to, start putting out some roots. It needs to get thirsty, basically, and I believe this just had too much water over the summer while it was hot and it wasn't growing, and it's, you know, obviously showing us like it's not happy, but I know it'll be fine. And we should be getting a cool front hopefully in the next month here in Houston, and at that point, just to relieve, take some of the stress off of the mother plant, I'll go ahead and take off one of these babies and then let the cut-in heal, and then put it down in the dry dirt. Maybe by that point, if I wait long enough, it might even, you know, out of the dirt, it might start putting out new roots on its own. So I might experiment with that, just leaving it unpotted until it starts making its own roots. Alright, now let's talk about the medicinal properties of aloe, and I'll show you how to harvest it to use. And I just pull a lower leaf off. If you want, you can use scissors. Okay. And just give it a wash. I like my cutting board. It's got cactus and butterflies and all kinds of cute stuff going on. How to get it. You want to start, just trim the sides off like that, because that's where the spines are. Repeat on the other side. And then you can already see we're left with this really cool clear center. And you want to slice down the middle like so, filleting it. The reason we do it like this is because there's a the layer right under the aloe, not in this one so much, but in a lot of them, there's this like yellowy layer of latex, and that could be an irritant. So you just want the good clear stuff. And my favorite thing to do is just to like wipe it on my face, wait for it to dry, and then keep doing it until, you know, the gel is dried up. It feels so good. My skin just like chugs it like butter on bread. It's great. Yeah. Sometimes it can smell really bad. This kind doesn't really smell that bad. It kind of varies from plant to plant. But we got some in Jamaica one time from a guy on the beach, and it was the big kind, like the Miller, and I smelled it, and as he was walking away, I was like, man, this smells like chicken soup. And my husband's like, no, it must have been like his lunch spilled in his bag or something. And the guy heard me, and he goes, yeah, man, it smells like chicken soup. And I'm not sure why. I think it's like a defense mechanism in the plant. But there's a process. Oh man, I'm really getting into it. There's a process called, you like this silly pillow. It's called decolorization, and it's a way of, like, you know, separating the yellow latex from the gel of the plant itself. So aloe is a really amazing plant. There's a ton of medicinal properties, vitamins, enzymes, uses. They're still doing a lot of studies. It's got like all these different amino acids we need and fatty acids. So it's definitely an amazing beneficial plant. It grows very well depending on where you live. Once you get it established, if it's in the right climate, it's just such a rewarding plant. I've even like gotten a bunch of this from, harvested a bunch of the gel and used it in my hair. Use it on burns, use it, you know, basically at least 2 or 3 times a week, and I still have like a ton left. Like, you guys didn't even see it all. Yeah. So this has been fun. Is there anything else we need to talk? I did a lot of research on the medicinal qualities of aloe vera, and I just don't think I have time to fit them all in this video, but I'm going to include a link to where I found a lot of the information in the video description below. And one other thing that I thought was really funny is, of course, while I'm Googling, why does aloe vera smell like chicken soup, like all these other results came up. It was like, why does my aloe smell like fried chicken or chicken broth or turkey gravy? And so again, I didn't come to like a conclusion on that yet, but I do think it's that yellow latex on the inside. So again, be careful about getting that on you. It does not smell very pleasant, even though it does smell like chicken soup. most of the aloe I've used, it either doesn't have much of a scent or it smells like BO. But you just wash it off and the smell fades really quickly. At least I think so. I can't tell if others can still smell it on me. My husband might, but he likes to join in and use the leaves too when he sees me doing it. So, well, I know that was a lot of information, but you guys asked a lot of questions and I wanted to cover as much as I could in one video. And I think, you know, there's a lot of different topics, you know, about the medicinal qualities or, you know, the hybrids and stuff that we can make some other videos about. I hope it was helpful. Be sure to check out the succulent manual. It's a guide to care and repair for all climates. It's an ebook form and on my website at sucsforyou.com/the succulent manual. And hopefully I'll have a paperback out soon by the holidays, if not by the holidays, by spring. And go ahead and leave your questions in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe, because that way you'll get notifications when I post questions and polls and stuff about future videos on the my YouTube channel's community page. So I'll try to link to that in the description too. So thanks for watching, guys.